Bearded dragon diet. Now, when we're talking about everything you can possibly give to feed your bearded dragon, I mean, the list is just enormous. We're talking about crickets, dubia roaches, mealworms, superworms, waxworms, earthworms, collard greens, dandelion greens, fruits, veggies. I mean, the list just goes on. And that can get very overwhelming trying to figure out, what is the best feeder as live insects to feed your bearded dragon, and, what is the best staple veggies and fruits to give. I thought I constructed a little video showing a nice big range of all the best options as far as feeders and veggies go. Some that are okay every now and then, but generally aren't the best, and then some that you should really just avoid at all costs. So let's sit back, relax, and dive into the bearded dragon diet. So I'll be honest, this video is going to be pretty long and pretty comprehensive. I want to make sure that I don't leave anything out. So pretty much it's going to be categorized into three main categories. That's going to be live insect feeders, veggies and fruits, and then supplementations. But not only that, we're also going to be putting all those three categories into three subcategories. Those subcategories are going to be more of a staple, you want to feed pretty often and is a pretty safe and healthy choice. Every now and then, not really the best, but can be used as part of a varied diet and, with a little bit less than you say using that first group. And then lastly, some things that you should just avoid at all costs or just feed very rarely. All those categories and everything, the video is going to be very long. I don't expect everyone to sit through it. Maybe you guys just want to know a specific thing, whether that be the insects, the feeders, or maybe the supplementation. So we're going to take a few seconds in this next clip. I'll just show a little bit of my bearded dragon, and I'll actually be time-stamping everything so you guys don't need to go through the whole video and try to find the information for yourselves. So let's roll that clip of my cute bearded dragon Rex. So live insects. Now, when we're talking about live insects, I do not believe there is a staple insect for the bearded dragon. Something you can feed just one food source from for the rest of the bearded dragon's life and it would stay healthy. I just don't think that is a plausible idea for the bearded dragon. The best diet when it comes to them is a variety. This includes utilizing all the bugs available to you, the crickets, the dubia roaches, the lobster roaches, red runners, mealworms, superworms, waxworms, phoenix worms, calci worms, just all of the bugs utilizing as a variety diet. However, some of those bugs listed can be more beneficial and nutritious, while others should kind of be used at a more sparing rate, and we'll get into that list right now. Now, when I'm thinking of insects that are generally of good nutrition, are healthy, and can be fed a little bit more often than others, I think of three main things, and that's going to be dubia roaches, horned worms, and of course the phoenix worms. These are going to be bugs that are going to have a little more nutritional value, whether that be protein or calcium, and a little less of the fat index, or just less of a fatty bug. I believe a few of the roaches to actually be a very healthy and nutritious feeder when it comes to the bearded dragon. These are things such as like lobster roaches, which I'm actually expanding on currently. Right now I have 2 dubia colonies going, but I do, let's see right here, actually just purchased some lobster roaches. I've got 24 right here. I'm actually waiting on an order of 100 to arrive within the next week, and I'm pretty excited for that. But anything like lobster roaches, red runners, things like that, just roaches in general provide a more nutritious content versus other bugs. Let's move on to that second category. That's going to be bugs that are still pretty okay, something that I would personally feed a little more sparingly, just as maybe an occasional treat to keep that variety in that diet going, but not something that I would feed as a staple. Think of a feeder that should be fed a little more sparingly, something that should be only on occasion. I think of a couple of insects, and that's going to be the crickets, the mealworms, and the superworms. As far as nutritional content goes for these guys, these are feeders that just provide not as much nutrition when it comes to the importance of such as the phosphorus, calcium, and protein, or maybe just have a little bit too much of a fat content for me to personally suggest them as a staple feeder. Then lastly, we'll get into some feeders that should just be avoided. You don't really need to feed them maybe once in a blue moon, but really just because of the nutritional content, I cannot suggest them as feeding more than just very rarely. And the two that come to mind are going to be pinkies and waxworms. The big reason why I really don't suggest these bugs or rodents, I guess one of them is a rodent, as just feeding just very rarely is just because of the fat content. Waxworms and pinkies have so much fat in their nutritional content that it just is, it's too much for a beardy to, I mean, your beardy's gonna blow up like a balloon if you're feeding this every week. But all jokes aside, you do want to keep a low-fatty diet as far as the insect feeders go, because not only is obesity actually a real thing, you know, not just to be joking about, they can also develop some negative consequences with that, such as fatty liver disease, which no one wants their bearded dragon to get. So we categorize the insects into a good little, you know, often feeder to occasional to once in a blue moon, but let's talk a little bit on, you know, how often you should be feeding these things and really what those categories mean. Now, going on the frequency that you should feed these things, I would list the animals in the first category, which is of course the dubia roaches and those things, as something you can feed weekly, you know. It has a pretty good nutritional content. There's not going to be any much detrimental thing and feeding this as a staple food. As far as the middle category goes, these are things you want to be feeding, you know, once every couple of weeks, not too often, but something to really change up the diet and make sure your bearded dragon is getting all the nutritional requirements that it needs. And then lastly, that last category, something you feed rarely, I would really do this maybe once a month. As far as the pinkies go, maybe a handful times out of the year. I mean, although pinkies are part of the varied diet, you know, these guys can just rodents as far instead of just the insects and veggies. Just the fat content alone, there really is not much nutritional value when it comes to pinkies. This is something that you'd really want to, maybe a female after laying eggs, you want her to get that fat content back and really pump her back up. I do feed pinkies at that point after my female does lay eggs, although not fertile, just infertile. But yeah, I think that's enough talk about the insect feeders. Let's move on to the big category, the one that is going to be pretty extensive, and that is, of course, feeding veggies and fruits. Now, when we're talking about all the veggies and fruits that you can feed your bearded dragon and trying to categorize them, that is going to be an extensive list. I might miss a few. I'm really just going to try to do the main ones that you can openly find at your local grocery store and go from there. If there's some I missed, I apologize. Categorizing vegetables for your bearded dragon. Now, there is a long list, and I am doing vegetables and fruits, so I think what I'm going to do is when going through the charts, I'm going to combine the vegetables and the fruits. So I'll talk about, you know, first we're going into more of a staple diet and one that holds more nutritional value. We'll be doing veggies first and then fruits, then we'll go into the next year, lift veggies, fruits, and the next year. We'll line it up like that. There's too many to read off for me to actually memorize all of them, so I'm going to go off. I made a little list. I'm just going to go off of the staple greens and vegetables because I'll be honest, man, my memory's not that good to remember the 20 plus things that we're about to go over. So when we are talking about good nutritional veggies that you can feed on a daily or staple basis, we're going to be talking about greens first, such as collard greens, dandelion greens, mustard greens, turnip greens, things like that. Some vegetables that are also very good are eggcorn squash, butternut squash, green beans, snap peas, sweet potato, and yellow squash. Moving forward to some staple fruits that are a good and healthy choice. A very safe option are going to be mangoes, papayas, and the prickly pear or cactus leaves. Now going on to our next tier or the next category, these are going to be occasional greens, veggies, and fruits to feed. These are things that you might want to do a little more sparingly. Some may cause a calcium binder if fed too often, but you know, you still want to keep that variety diet and keep it as part of a variety really. So these are things that I would categorize as just feeding it a little more sparingly and not as a staple. And those greens and veggies go as followed. I would do things like carrot tops, celery leaves, cucumbers, kale, parsley. As far as veggies goes, maybe some asparagus, beets, bell peppers, broccoli, carrots, cauliflower, green peas, and pumpkin. Also zucchini. Throw some zucchini in there. Now, yes, before we keep going, I'm going to mention the elephant in the room. In my last video, the Bearded Dragon Care Guide, I'll put a little tag right there for you. It was mentioned that I said broccoli could be fed as a staple. That was my mistake. I was not thinking too much, to be honest. I was feeding some parrots, and they did get some broccoli, and so I had broccoli on the mind, and they just spurted it out. But yes, broccoli should be fed at a more sparingly or occasional rate due to it being a calcium binder. When we're thinking of occasional fruits or fruits you should feed a little more sparingly. I mean, to be honest, fruits in general should not be fed nearly as much or in the same content as far as like the greens go, just because they're having a little less of nutritional content and a lot more like natural sugar. But going down the list for fruits, we have things like apples, bananas, blackberries, blueberries, cantaloupe, honeydew melon, peaches, raspberries, strawberries, even watermelon. And then going to the last list, these are veggies that should actually just be avoided entirely, not even fed once. This is things that you should avoid. This can be just not good for your reptile at all, or even actually very toxic for them. So these would go as followed. Things such as tomatoes, avocados, rhubarb, lettuce. Lettuce provides no nutritional value. It's the majority of it's made out of water. Stop feeding your bearded dragon lettuce. Avocados are actually very toxic to your reptile. Not only that, they're just fat. Like, they're fat for you. They're not good at all. Do not feed avocados to your bearded dragon. And then going down that list of foods to avoid for your bearded dragon, these are things like grapefruits, lemons, limes, orange, really any of the citrus fruits. They're just too high in citrus acid. It's very disruptive to the bearded dragon's digestive system. It's just food that you should avoid. There's plenty of options in the very good or occasional list that you don't really even need these choices. When we're talking about how often you should feed these categorizing of fruits and veggies in these 3 tiers, the first tier is definitely things that you want to feed just weekly, pretty much every time. You definitely want to have stuff like collard greens and dandelion greens in every meal pretty much as far as that goes. As far as the things a little more occasionally, this is stuff for weekly, maybe a couple times a month, stuff that's not necessarily very good for them, but stuff that they can enjoy and be part of that varied and nutritious diet. Then of course the last tier, just things you should never, or things you should never feed, things you should just avoid. These things are not good for the bearded dragon whatsoever, and really there's no need for it. Alright, and that's going to wrap it up. Pretty much every food item that you can possibly feed your bearded dragon is going to be listed somewhere in this video. Maybe I missed a few. If so, I apologize. You know, if I did miss a few, leave me in the comment section. Let me know some bugs that I missed. Of course, I did not mention locusts. I'm sure some of my UK subscribers and viewers are going to say locusts. I can't get locusts in America, and so I didn't list them because I don't have them. I don't know much about them, really. Other than that, if you like these types of educational content revolving around the bearded dragon, I am thinking of going a little deeper in bearded dragon care and going over proper supplementation and the scheduling with that. So if you do enjoy that, let's get this video to 40 likes and I'll continue on this little saga of bearded dragon care. But other than that, if you want to see some more of my animals or breeding products, you can always follow me on Facebook or Instagram at DBCB Exotics. And other than that, thank you guys for watching, and I hope you have a great day.